Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays talking all things leadership, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and we are excited to be here with you again. And today we're going to talk about something I'm going to confess out of my out of my comfort zone, but that's where we grow, right? That's where we grow. And it just means doing a little bit of extra research, and but that doesn't mean I don't have thoughts. I don't have thoughts, maybe ill-informed thoughts, maybe not. We'll have a discussion, we'll find out. You, our audience, you will, I'm sure, disabuse me of any notions that I have that are wrong. So, with that, we're talking AI and interviews. And so I saw a LinkedIn post, and I believe I have found that post. I'm going to put it in the comments. I think I can put it in the comments here in the show. Um, the link for that so that you can go and read it. And if it's not the original article that I read, nobody knows but me, right? So I think I have that article. It got me thinking about what's the I guess it's an adage. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, and or at least questioning that, is what's good for the goose good for the gander, and whether or not ultimately there were some comments on other posts that I read and some articles that I pulled up asking whether or not it's cheating to use AI during your interview. And so there are a number of different ways we can go. I've got some thoughts and things. I'm sure Robert has some thoughts that he's come up with from his research. We'll see where those things dovetail. We generally come up with a topic beforehand, and then we let it, or the conversation, organically happen. So maybe we'll end up in the same place. Maybe we'll end up with you having lots of tools, strategies that you can walk away with because he's got some and I've got some, and they're not the same. So, any opening thoughts on this, Robert?
Interesting topic. I think that the adage, what is, we should say, is what is good for the goose also good for the gander? Because as I was doing a little research on this, I just think it's very interesting. I have a stance, and we'll talk about it when we get to it, I think. Mhm.
Okay. So here's where I'm thinking we'll go. Just a little setting the stage, right? AI, artificial intelligence, and all the buzz the last few years has been started with Chat GPT. There are other language models, right? That what the large language models, I think it's called. And so there are different models. Other programs have been built on the Chat GPT open AI platform. And so there are all kinds of tools, and there are all kinds of platforms and branded AI things that you can use. This is not about that. This is not about promoting any particular thing, but asking the question about how AI fits in sort of the recruiting continuum, one, and in particular, how candidates, if candidates, should be using it to aid them in preparing for, or in this particular article was about a candidate who is apparently using AI in the midst of the interview, and the way they found the way they found out was that the candidate had glasses on.
They could see the reflection.
See the reflection. So, what I'm imagining happened, because it wasn't fully spelled out, was that a question was asked, or questions are asked in the interview. The candidate would type that question in, or had it triggered for AI to hear the questions, and would feed back answers. The candidate would then give those answers. And sometimes, I guess, what set the recruiter or the hiring manager sort of thinking what's going on here is that sometimes the candidate would ask to have the question repeated. There were long pauses before the answer was given, etc. So there were some telltale signs, apparently, allegedly, that the candidate was getting some assistance in the actual interview. And so the question people were asking, is that cheating? Or is that smart strategy? And if the answer that you give ultimately is true, and this is sort of where, I put my lawyer's hat on for a second. If the answer is true and correct, even if it is shaped or worded by some AI tool, is there a problem with that? Right? I don't know. It's a question. I'm going to leave a lot of questions. I'm going to leave a lot of questions on the table. And back to that, is what's good for the goose good for the gander? There are lots of ways that recruiters, hiring entities, companies, hiring managers, HR departments, lots of different ways that they have inserted AI into the process, right? And most of us are familiar with ATS, automatic tracking systems. It's something that's been used for quite some time. And it's one of those tools that they use to help screen out candidates, to identify whether or not someone's resume meets the minimum requirements. But there are other ways that it's being used that I find fascinating, and until I did the research, didn't know was happening. And one of those is that AI is actually doing recruiting. Right. And so there are a number of different ways that happens. Some is just a question will pop up and you give a video answer. There's no one there on the other side. And then there are those where you are interacting with, I guess, an avatar. So it gives a semblance of you being in an interview with someone, but there's not an actual live person on the other side. So I said a lot, Robert.
There's a lot going on here. So I like analogies and things like that. So if a married person, if a married person kisses another person other than their spouse, who their spouse doesn't know, is it cheating?
Is tongue involved?
Let's say yes.
Yes.
Okay. So.
I mean, is it a friendly hello? Haven't seen you in a while, or so.
Right. So
I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. It depends, right?
So that's my answer. It depends. So if you're using AI to prep you for the interview, is a tool that can be very helpful. I use AI not all the time, but I use it to aid in my research. I'll ask AI to pull up some articles, on a topic that I'm researching, and it will send me there. I'll ask AI to deeper into certain. Can't talk now. Dig deeper into certain definitions of certain things. Certainly do that. Now, imagine we're having this conversation right now where people expect us, you and I, to have some level of knowledge or expertise, because this is a show about leadership thing. And a question comes in from a member of the audience, and I pose it to AI and I answer, then it's cheating because I didn't know the answer. And I'm using AI to give the answer to me, right? Now, now if I'm acting like I knew it, then it's cheating. But if I say I don't know, let me do some research and find out, there's difference. So there's a gray area there. And when we talk about,
I'll give you gray. I'll give you gray.
Gray area there. So I'm kissing AI without tongue. So there's a gray area there. However, I draw the line when AI is doing the work for the person. And here's the thing: there are two things to look out for. The interviewer asks you the question, and you use AI, and the response you give is not true.
Definitely, that's a problem. I'm a definite cheating for that.
Yeah. So someone asks a question. They tell me about a time you did X, Y, and Z. You use AI, and AI will give you an answer that may not be true. And if it's not true, and you're using that, you're using
as if
you did, then that is cheating. The other thing to look out for, and here's the other caveat, is that AI does what they call in computer terms hallucinates. A lot of times AI will give you a response that is nonsense. And if you really don't know the topic that you're talking about or you're responding to, you will also give a nonsense answer. So it will not work in your favor. So two things to look out for there is, if you didn't do it, it's a lie, it is cheating. And if AI is hallucinating, as they call it, and you give the answer, well, you just doomed yourself because it's a nonsensical answer. The other thing is this: let's go a step further. Say you get the job and it becomes very clear during your introductory period that what you said was a lie. And that happens. You will lose your job. Right. So that's when I consider it cheating. And that's those are some of the dangers of using AI. Now, of course, let's go back to our original question. Is what's good for the goose good for the gander? In this case, no, because you have no power. It's the organization that is hiring you that has they create the rules. So if they find out you are being assisted in the interview process, you're going to be disqualified. Then, of course, what's good for the goose is not good for the gander.
So, okay, a lot of what you said, I agree with. Definitely giving answers that are not true as if they were true. Giving answers that portray knowledge that you don't have as if you have that knowledge. I do have a problem with.
Yeah.
I don't think I would, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm going to say it. I don't think I would be adept enough, quick enough in the middle of an interview to be able to take a question that was asked of me, and unless I was planning, right, really planning this out, to have set up a scenario with AI, which you could do, right, where you've given it all kinds of information about yourself so that it could answer a question really as if it were you, because it has some knowledge about, you get questions that tell us about a time when you, right, challenges you've had, things that you've learned, situations where you have had conflict with people, how you dealt with, right? So you theoretically, you could set up a scenario where that comes up, and the answer that you use, either because you prepared it in advance or as you ask the questions, because maybe it's asked in a slightly different way, that that AI takes information that is true for you, right? And gives you back an answer, not a nonsensical one, but an answer that allows you to give an answer maybe that is more cogent than you would deliver. A lot of people are not good in interviewing, period, right? Full stops. I have interviewed lots and lots.
Me too, yeah.
Hundreds of people, right? And everyone is not a good interview. They don't interview well.
Right.
And notwithstanding their qualifications, and if what you are using to make determination about someone who moves through the process is based on the interview and not solely what you have about them on paper, then there are people that could miss out. So I could see a scenario where having, a response crafted for you that allows you to come across as more cogent and intelligent with factual information could be helpful. So the question would be, is that cheating, or is that more an assist?
You're asking me that?
I'm asking you.
That's laziness. Because you're gonna, that's a lot of, look, my whole thing is, if you're going to do all of that, just answer the question, right?
So I could answer the question, but I'm nervous, and I get tongue-tied, and so I have a problem. And so this is helping me, particularly, if the process from start to finish is going to be video. It's going to be different if you have to show up in front of people. They're not going to allow you to pull your laptop or your phone out and put the answers, the questions and answers in a device in person, right? So we're talking primarily video or virtual.
Got it. So let me be devil's advocate. Why not practice? So there's pros and cons, right?
I agree with you. Right? I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Interviewing and in front of people. I'm just surmising.
So my whole thing is this: if you're gonna, and this is why I said, don't do it. If it could possibly jeopardize your chances of getting that job, then don't do it. So and here's the thing. I don't know about anybody else other than myself. I know that whenever I engage in something that's a little bit sketchy, I can't pull it off because I get too nervous, right? It's that puritanical religious morality that I was raised in. I'm not saying I'm like that now, but that's how I was raised. And so I get little, I still have that, this is not a good thing. So I tend to put myself in a situation where I won't have that cognitive dissonance, because I want to be clear and not have to worry about, oh my goodness, they know that I'm looking at my phone, or, can they hear anything that's going on? Or so that's just me. I know there are some people that don't have those, guardrails. But my answer to them is, if it could possibly disqualify you from the job, then don't do it. That's one thing. The other thing, and I want to go back to something you alluded to earlier about organizations, and it's in the question that you asked earlier. Here's the thing about AI. AI is as good as the people that program the algorithm. So AI still introduces lots of bias because people have biases. I can't tell you the number of times that just, facial recognition, we're not even talking about AI, won't recognize me because I'm too dark, right? because people don't take that into account when they program those things, because perhaps I do not look like the person that programmed that. So there's a lot to, that people, organizations that are using AI need to consider when they're using these things. Now, I tend to think that it's okay to use it as a tool, right? So if you're
Mhm.
using it to enhance or using it, I have no problem with them using it to weed out certain resumes using keywords. So, okay, I'm fine with that. But I read an article that some organizations are using AI to actually interview.
Right.
I have a problem with that because, like I said before, bias can be introduced there. And you're relying, it's like a self-driving car, right? Here's the thing: when you don't use a skill, you lose that skill. You are the person that is supposed to be interviewing people, recruiting those people, understanding, the whole human interaction, so you can choose the best candidate for your organization. So so here's my flip to that: if AI is so good, why do you still have a job? So
It's evolving.
it's evolving, all right. But that's my point, and soon they speculate that more organizations will be using, in the next year, it's going to be at least a quarter of organizations, at least in this country, will be using AI in some form, in the recruiting and or interview process. So having worked in organizations and know that plenty of organizations use shortcuts, I see this as a big problem. But we'll see. Only time will tell.
So, you bring up some potential legal compliance issues around bias. The concept of using AI as the interviewer, right? Not just a screening
Right.
tool, but to do interviews, whether it's the first round interview, the initial screening, first round. And certainly biases can be included in that. But what is, I think, marketed and some of the things that I've read is that it actually takes the bias out, right?
Ha!
Because
Impossible. Is it programming itself?
yes, it's AI.
I find that as they would say in the olden days, I think that's poppycock. Boulder Dash. I just find that hard to believe, because we know that there are humans behind that, right? Um, and
But if let's say it's about listening for the answers.
Mhm. Okay.
Right. Let's say I don't know what bias you are assuming gets included in that, but it's listening to see how you have answered the question. It's not looking at you as an individual, whether you're dark skin, light skin,
Okay.
have an accent, whatever. Let's say those things somehow could be programmed out, and it's simply listening for how you answer the question on a rubric, much like if you had written a paper and there's a rubric.
Okay.
Do you meet these criteria? Does your answer meet these criteria? And if it does that potentially take the bias piece out? Because as I mentioned earlier, when someone is answering a question in an interview, right? We have biases in as humans. We
Absolutely.
have biases in those that interview process. I have been in on panels where we've talked about, the candidates after we're done interviewing them. And sometimes there have been people that I know the quality of the work, but the determination on whether or not they move forward is based on their performance in that interview. And if you take simply how they perform there and not focus on their qualities and the substance of what they deliver, right? There's a different sort of bias that comes into play there. So, is one bias better than another? I would assume, legally speaking, that the biases of performance are different than biases based on protected class.
Right.
And those are the things that have to be addressed, certainly with AI, but some of the other biases that are there, maybe they're fair game.
So let me throw this one at, and I see what you're saying, and I can see why AI might be helpful there, but something came up when you were talking about that. What about you have a rubric for the answers, right? It hits this
Mhm.
criteria. But what about the outlier, the brilliant question, the novel, I mean, so the novel answer, the brilliant answer that's outside of your rubric that could be a game changer for your organization. So you're actually, people that would use that would actually stymie themselves because they're missing out on, you know, a possible fantastic candidate for
For
their
sure.
organization because
For
it's
sure.
not meeting their criteria. So
For
that's
sure.
that's another thing about AI that people don't seem to, which is what, look, there are a lot of kids or students, I shouldn't call them kids, that are using AI, and certainly they're not engaging their brain when they're using AI to write papers for them and do everything for them. But the other part of that is, if you're not thinking outside the box or thinking at all, right? You're just you may be missing out on possibly coming up with something that is far greater than AI can produce. And I think that is part of the problem. And I think this is where people get, people that are advocates for machine learning and AI, they kind of get stuck. It's when you listen to somebody like um, Mark Zuckerberg, who was talking, who was before Congress, and he was talking, he was defending Facebook, and he was like, oh, it's all about putting together a better algorithm. No, it's not. It's not, because that it doesn't really solve the problem, right? If that were the case, Facebook would be getting better. It is not. It's getting worse, right? For lots of reasons that we are not going to go into. But that it's not just about creating a better algorithm. Like I mentioned before, your algorithm is only good as the people that are programming it and
Right.
creating it. So it has limitations. Now, can AI do some things better? Certainly. I think on a very rudimentary level, it certainly can. But I don't think it is the magic, the brass ring that everybody thinks it is. I think
Right.
it's going to cause some problems. It already has. When we start looking at this whole topic and how people are using it, interviewing is a skill,
True.
and
On
interview
both sides, on
on,
both sides
on
of the
both
table.
sides, on
Yes.
both sides of the table. Why
Yes.
would you cede your skill to a machine, knowing that at some point you may be called upon to actually use that skill? That is not a smart move on either side, I don't think.
I think that's a good point, and to your question or analogy, about having someone with an outlier answer that you might miss out on because it doesn't fit in the rubric, and AI is not equipped to say, "Wow!" Right? You're sitting there as a panel, and someone answers a question, and you go, "Wow!" Right? We hadn't thought of that, or that's brilliant, or whatever. Doesn't quite fit with the rubric, but it's like this is the kind of person that we actually want, and the possibility of missing out on that would be quite unfortunate, right? But I think that helps, and this is not an argument for AI at all. This is actually an argument in the direction of what we talk about here frequently. What is it that you're looking for in an employee, right? Being really clear about what it is you're looking for, beyond skill, right? Beyond skill. And a couple of things that you said, the importance of being able to think. And we have a generation now that's coming up where this is a tool that they will have from the very beginning. And if they can just plug and play, plug something in, and then take that and pass it in as their work and never really have to think. I'm glad that I'm as old as I am. I'm just going to leave that there, right? As opposed to, and here's another analogy, the calculator, right? And I'm old enough to know.
Don't bring calculators to class.
Before you had calculators in class. Yes, I'm old enough to remember you did not have calculators in class. I'm not old enough to remember using an abacus at the beginning, right? So I'm somewhere in between the abacus and a calculator. But I am old enough to know we did not have calculators. And when calculators became a thing, that teachers were constantly saying, you still need to know how to perform the functions. The calculator is a tool. It is an aid, but you still need to know how to solve the problem without the calculator, right? Particularly when Texas Instruments came along and was able to do more complicated things than just addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, right? When you're doing things with exponents and imaginary numbers and all of those things, right? That a simple calculator can't do, but using a scientific calculator is of no use to you if you don't understand the foundation of the math and the problem that you're trying to solve. And so I can see AI being that same thing. And if you don't understand the essence and the art of interviewing on both sides, of identifying and selecting candidates to move through the process, to be clear about what it is you're looking for in terms of the employees that you're trying to bring into your organization, unless you're looking for automatons, right? Then you need to still have those discussions and be, an organization with a culture that is looking for something other than just simply making this as streamlined and the process is streamlined and as easy for you as some huckster software solution provider is trying to make this for you. And a lot of the complaints that I saw in some of the things that I've read, the posts, the comments, the articles, was about removing the human element out of this process. And so the question then becomes, where do we draw the line, right? Where do we draw the line on both sides? If it's okay to use AI on one side, how do we, and to what extent do we allow it on the other side? And I think you and I can agree that there comes a point in time on each side of the table where AI has served its purpose and shouldn't go any further, right? And maybe different situations, different organizations, there's some nuances there. But I would say, at least on the candidate side, researching, preparing and structuring your answers, practicing, having practice sessions, right? Those things are okay.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Getting real-time answers to an interview, probably not. First of all, one, you can ask AI, give me a list of the most commonly asked questions, some outline. You can, as you said, you can practice.
Yeah.
You can practice, practice, practice. And not doing so, you could call it lazy. I would say certainly less committed to getting the job. If you really wanted it, right? We do, all of us do the things that we are want to do in order to get the things that we really want.
That's so true. And here's something that popped up in my head. I don't know how true this is, but this is something that I typically live by. Whenever I'm in driving and with a younger person in the car who's interested in driving, and I go, you drive kind of how you live, right? If you're all over the road and you're selfish, you're probably a selfish person. The amount of effort you put in to actually practicing, that's probably how you're going to work on the job. And if you're looking
Mhm.
for shortcuts and ways to skirt around and easy way,
Before you even get the job.
that's probably how you get. That's probably
It's
so.
true.
So I can see why there's a concern there, right? So
But does that not then apply to the other side? If this is how you treat us, that
absolutely
you remove the human element, you don't even want to hear my answers and the brilliance that comes from me because you're looking for some, four corners,
rubric.
a rubric, based answer that
Absolutely
doesn't allow for creativity in my thinking, then, maybe you're not the organization for me.
correct. And look, I don't want to offend any of my human resources colleagues, but I made a joke years ago when I was working in the human resources department in an organization, and it was around Halloween, and people were coming to work dressed in outfits. I said we should just change the name to Inhuman Resources, and I said because and my boss didn't like that because that's basically how we were seen. Is like human resources is in a lot of ways the opposite of what the name describes. And so AI is only deepening that suspicion or that,
Yeah.
you know, that expectation of people that, they don't really care about the human element. And so again, a useful tool. I am not against organizations using it as a tool, just like I am not against, somebody using a lever to lift something.
Yeah.
That's smart, right? It's like this is heavy. I get a lever. It helps me lift it, right? It would be, kind of silly for me to sit there and struggle and try to lift something that is way beyond my capacity to lift without the proper tool. It's a tool. But on the other hand, I'm not going to see a heavy object and throw a lever over there and tell a lever to go ahead and lift it for me. But that's what people are doing in organizations. They're actually using AI, which is the lever, and they're telling it to do the work for them. And I have a lot of issues with that. Like I said before, you're missing out on some really, quite possibly some really great candidates because they're going to say things that are outside of your criteria that may be just the thing your organization is looking for, if not now, maybe later on. And to the flip side of that, again, laziness.
Right.
And this goes back to something that we talk about all the time. As a leader, you shouldn't be asking people to do things that you're not willing to do yourself. But yet, we have a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations that will say, well, we want our people to do this, but we're not willing to do this. And then are surprised when people are upset with them. But that's just my personal thing, and I think you agree with me on that. It's like, look, if you're going to do it, right, you have to expect that other people are going to
Right.
emulate what you're doing. And if you're saying that what they're doing is wrong, then you have to expect some kind of pushback from those people because you're doing it. Now, this goes back to another thing I said a long time ago when I worked at a financial institution, and it was not in a great area. And we had some people there who were high up in the organization who were very I don't I want to use the proper word, but they weren't very personable. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
When you speak to them, they sometimes would answer, sometimes they wouldn't, sometimes they would condescend. But those people sometimes would come out of the office and get mugged because it wasn't a gray area. Here you go. So we look at it, they're just a human being. The person that was perpetrating that crime didn't go, oh, so you're a vice president, let me just let you go by.
Right.
It doesn't, it's equal, right? We're all equal human beings regardless of title, and that's something that you and I talk about all the time. If it's good for you as a leader, it should be good for the people that are on your team. So it brings up a couple of really interesting points.
No, I agree with you, and and what I hear and what you've said is sort of that the balance is that efficiency is fine, but not at the expense of the human element, and including a human judgment, and you've got to allow for that. I read an article, I believe it was an article, and I'll drop again some of these links in the comments, but I can't remember the company, a large multi,
Okay.
one of those conglomerate companies, and they needed to fill thousands of positions, and how they were using AI to sort of move through all the processing in the interviews so that they could get more people on board.
Sure.
And certainly I would say at the expense of what culture, right? And the expense of authenticity. And you could do that. What is it going to cost you having people who may, what do you say, good on paper, right? Good on paper, but really not the right fit. And so, and I get it. There are assessments and tools, and you can streamline all kinds of things that can move people through the process. But I would agree with you. You can't take the human element out. You don't want to take the human element out. And I think some of this is probably sparked by people feeling like, human judgment allows for bad hiring as well, right?
Sure.
And so you're not going to ever be perfect at hiring, or probably mostly not going to be perfect at hiring. But if you want to get better, get clearer about what really matters, right? What characteristics, what qualities do you need in the employees for the jobs? What are some of the criteria that you're using to screen people out that aren't really relevant, right? Every job does not need a college degree. Every job does not need to have, someone needs to have a master's degree so you can pay them $15 an hour. Right. So stop and think about what you're asking for and whether or not it's going to get you the person who's going to succeed in the job. Right. That's what you should be focusing on. What does that person need? What do they need to bring to the table? And what can you help them develop in order to do the job? And and not be afraid of making a mistake. Yes, mistakes can be costly, but if you get clear about what you're looking for, you don't have to take things off the table. And we did an episode on hiring and some things that you can do to, if you want to screen people out, have them do a supplemental questionnaire.
Exactly. So
if you want to take, hundreds of people applying for a job and bring that down to a manageable level, add a supplemental questionnaire in there.
Yeah. And you know what? Here, I'm going to, so this is a kind of a weird two-part statement, maybe three-part statement. So let me start with a question. What is the purpose of using AI in recruiting? What's the purpose?
So from what I read, efficiency.
Okay, efficiency. So efficiency.
And that's a prime driver, a
Okay.
prime driver.
So efficiency. So I'm guessing that when an organization, I'm being facetious here. I'm not really guessing. When you hire an employee, you're hoping that you're getting the best candidate that is going to stay within your organization. Here's my prediction: AI will not help foster better retention. It will not. So
I agree with you. I agree
it
with you.
it's not going to do that. So why use it, right? It's not. So
That's a really good point, right? And it goes back to our what is it that you're trying to accomplish?
well, but I'm using this from the standpoint. So here's how I'm looking at this. I can almost guarantee that when schools let people start using calculators, test scores got better, right? Did they stay like that? Nope. Because it starts to normalize. It no longer becomes that novel thing it fades. Everything. Any new.
Yeah, it didn't help me in organic chemistry at all. I'm just saying.
Right. So it's one of those things. It's not going to solve the problem. Go ahead and use it. Pay the company that's going to bring it into your organization. If that's what you think it's going to do, you'll have that brand new shiny objects and effect. It's
Right?
going to.
Shiny object. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you have that effect. It will seem to you like it's solving problems and it's doing things that it's amazing. Guaranteed. I guarantee that over time that's going to fade and it will not solve the problem for you. Just like we have cars with more features than ever before. I'm sure accidents have gone down a bit, not that much.
It's interesting you say that because I just asked this question the other day, right? We have one of those cars that, all the features and couldn't drive for you. I've never let it drive for me. I tease every now and then when I don't feel like walking back to the car to say, I'm going to have the car come and get me. But I never have. And, but those features, you still need to be paying attention, right? You still need to be paying attention. So I hear your point. It's the same thing here. You can have all the bells and whistles. You still need to be engaged, and AI in your hiring process is not going to make your employees more engaged. And what I've been reading is all the people that are turned off by the ever pervasive AI aspect of hiring, where the human element is taken out and people feel like they're just widgets in this cog, and that they are not being. So this tells me about your culture is the message that candidates are getting from how pervasive AI is in the process. So I wanted to leave our audience with a couple of strategies moving forward, because I know you're all about strategy. And so this is not new, just sort of wrapping a bow around this, that for both sides of the table, use AI as a tool. It's a tool, and use it as a tool. You can, as a candidate, use it for prep, not for performance. Right? You don't want to, you can use it to help with your research about the company, the role, industry trends, helping you with, maybe preparing for the salary negotiations and understanding the bigger picture. So you can use it in that way. You can use it for mock interviews. Right. I say that even though it's one of the services that I provide. So if you're one of my clients, don't use it for mock interviews, but other people, other people can. I mean, you can use it. And maybe there are tools out there that will give you some real-time feedback. Mostly, I think it would be to pose questions so you can answer questions and but don't rely on it to give you real-time answers to questions, and certainly don't pretend like any answers that you get are yours. Another strategy is to develop a strong personal narrative, right? Maybe it can help you refine your storytelling, but like Robert said, practice. Right, practice, right? Take your experiences, your insights, your problem solving skills, and craft your own story, and then practice telling your story, and not leave that to AI or a resume writer, even, right? That you need to be involved in. And that's sort of maybe another analogy, right? Is when we went from people writing their own resumes to hiring resume writers and people that say, well, can do a better job. I've never found that to be the case. I don't write resumes for my clients. I don't recommend they hire resume writers. I recommend that they go through a process and refine their resumes based on what it is they're doing, and having letting it be really a reflection of them. And then again, focusing on real-time communication and being adaptable, right? AI is not going to recreate the human element or connection in the process. And so I think this is particularly helpful on the interviewer side of the table, that you need to be there, present, engaging, asking thoughtful questions, questions that get to the essence of what it is you need to know about candidates, that's going to help you discern what kind of employees they're going to be, right? That's what you're looking for. And as an interviewee, they need to see how you react under pressure. And not just hear polished responses. And again, that's something when I'm working with my clients, is like, you want to be able to answer these questions, but you don't want them so rehearsed that it sounds like you're a robot.
Yeah.
Right. And so finding that balance, finding that place. So those are the things that I'm giving as takeaways. Your final thoughts.
My final thought is, use the tool to aid you in the job, to do the job, but do the job yourself. I think it's really important. You can use whatever you need to help you prepare, but do the job yourself. Don't let AI do it for you, because it is not you. And so those are my final thoughts.
I thought you're going to say, use the tool. Don't let the tool.
Yeah, that's a good one. Use the tool. Don't let the tool use you. Yeah.
And so with that, we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. Whether you watched us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, live, or on replay, we would love to hear your thoughts and comments. I've got a couple of links I'm going to drop into the comments for you, so you can check out some of the things that I've read. If Robert wants to drop some of his links in, he can do that as well. But Robert, if someone wanted to bypass AI and go with HI, human intelligence, or RI, Robert intelligence, how would they get in contact with you to do that?
They can reach out to me by sending me an email at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or you can go to my website, Robert Hilliard Coaching, and fill out that contact form. Let me know the kinds of challenges you're having, your goals, and we can set up a discovery call to see if we're going to be a good match for each other.
Awesome. Human element, a good match for each other. I love that. And if you want to reach out to me, you can. shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site. Let's talk about how I might be able to help you. And if you're interested in being on the show as a leader, we are always looking for guests. If you have a topic that you would like for us to cover, please let us know. You can reach out to Robert and or I, and let's have that conversation. Okay. So until next time, right? Use the tool. Don't let the tool use you.
Bye now.
And take care. Mm.